What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Scratch Agency podcast, hosted by Scratch Agents for Scratch Agents. My name is Stephen Turnbull, founder of T5 Insurance Services in Utica, New York, joined by my co-host today, Sean Fitzgerald, founder of LAF Advisors in Long Island, New York. Sean, we're in a New York state of mind today, huh?
Yes, sir. We got all three from New York, and we're kind of all equally separated, in the states. That's pretty cool.
What's going on at LAF today?
Dude, a whole bunch of stuff. Actually, the main thing I wanted to talk about is we just set up the website for the Scratch Agency podcast.
Oh,
we left
yes.
the out. We left the out. So it's just scratchagencypodcast.com. Definitely check it out. Let us know what you think. If you have any feedback, we could probably use help on making it a little bit better, but I think we did a pretty good job with it. Also, too, we hit 100 subscribers on YouTube finally. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And we're just trying to grow the pod, grow the agencies, live a big, happy life, all that fun stuff.
I tell you what are we? This is episode 44, I believe. It has been a fun journey, and I think the more and more we continue to do this and grow an audience, everybody says, "What's the plan?" Listen, we got no plan. We're just having fun. We're having fun. We're sharing our story. We're bringing on great people like the guests we had today to talk about the fun journey, and it's been a blast. But jumping right into today's episode, I've connected with this gentleman a few times, and just every time I leave the conversation, feel inspired. He's got a great story and is a scratch agent in the middle of it, going through what we joked before we started the call. We're going to talk today about how much fun we have each and every day as scratch agency owners. But it's my honor to welcome Derick LaTorre, founder of LaTorre Insurance Agency, to the show. Derick, thanks for joining us today. How are you?
Hey, Stephen and Sean. Thanks for having me. Doing well today.
We appreciate you taking the time to join us here. And we know we want to get into all the good scratch stuff, but tell us a little bit about Derick before we get into the fun insurance stuff, how you ended up in insurance, and then we'll go from there.
I think I got a story similar to a lot of us that ended up in insurance. It's called "You Get Out of College and You Need a Job." And that pays the bills, or maybe pays the bills, but something, right? And that's how I stumbled my way into insurance. Yeah, I'm a political science major and needed a job, and immediately out of college went and worked for the big Liberty Mutual. And, got trained by Mother Liberty, and here I am.
And so was that on the company side? Were you an agent for them?
Yeah, I was a personal lines sales rep. So this is before, this is going back quite a few years. So you're talking 2007. This is when they had direct sales reps, and all you could sell was Liberty Mutual personal lines, auto, home, and life. And, that's it. And they sent you to sales training and, told you how to sell their product. And, that was before the Liberty commercials and, whatever, whatever they're calling themselves now. And before the Comparian agents got in there, and they've changed so many times. But yeah, I spent two years there kind of learning the ropes. I was like, oh, this insurance gig is actually pretty cool. It's paying the bills. And so it was a good experience. I realized quickly out of the box that I did not want to work for a big corporation, nothing against Liberty, but you were one of, at the time there was like 35,000 employees worldwide or something. You're just a, number. And so I was like, yeah, well, I learned insurance, but I don't want to stay here for too long.
Yeah.
So what was the step after that, Derick? You work at Liberty for a couple of years. You realize the corporate world is maybe not your thing. What's the next step from there?
Yeah, the next step was I was like, this independent agency thing seems kind of cool. When I finally got my feet under me, I was like, I can't write, it was working for Liberty. It's like, it's a captive, right? It's really being a captive or direct. And I was like, either you hit and you can write somebody, or you don't write them and you got no other option. I was like, there's got to be a better way to do this thing. And so then I learned, I was like, okay, the independent world is where it's at. I grew up in the town that I'm in, grew up here, knew of some of the agencies. And I honestly just literally walked into one of the agents and was like, here, I'm trained, I'm licensed. I know you're not hiring, or at least advertising that you're hiring, but here's my resume. I'd like to work for you. And that's what I did. I went and worked for another agency for 12 years, and learned the independent side, and really just, grew, obviously then went from just selling personal lines, went to commercial lines, did a little bit more life insurance, got into a little bit of the benefits side of things, which is somewhat dangerous. And, and yeah, I mean, worked my way up through that agency, worked my tail off, became a part owner, equity owner, just grinded myself, through the journey, and managed personal lines department for the agency. And it was a very large agency. I mean, at the time I left in 2021, I mean, they had 27 employees, or maybe, so, good size agency. Personal lines was 70% of their business. So I had a staff of 15 reporting to me. And so it was fun until it wasn't fun.
Yeah.
And then that's when I decided it's time to do my own thing.
Yeah. Derick, talk to me how the path to, becoming a partner worked at that independent agency. Like, did you know going in you eventually wanted to be a partner, or is it something that just kind of came up? Like, what did that whole process look like?
Yeah, it just kind of came up. To be brutally honest, I was totally young and naive and had no clue,
Mm.
really, how that would look. And one day, doing all the right things, I was selling and I was networking and I was building referral sources, all the things that, we have to do as independent agents. And, built a pretty good sized book of business. And the principal agent, the president of the agency, just came to me one day and he's like, "Hey, listen, we want to make you a partner and I'm going to sell you some of my shares. Would you like to do that?" I was like, sure. I mean, I was literally so naive. I was like, okay, sounds good. I had no clue what like the finances look like. I mean, it just totally, now, and it was a good deal. It's not that it wasn't a bad deal. Like I totally didn't get ripped off or screwed or anything like that. But I, I just didn't know what I was getting myself into. And yeah, I mean, it sounds kind of dumb, but I just stumbled my way into it. But also was doing the right things.
Well, and one of the things I love about what we're doing in this podcast in general, insurance podcasts or just podcasting in general, is saying something or talking about something that is relating with something that someone's going through right now, right? And so and I preface that with this next question, because you don't have to get into the weeds of things, of course, but if you were to look back on that opportunity that you had, and if you were to talk to someone right now that has that opportunity in front of them, what's a few things you'd say to them along the lines of be careful about this, or make sure you talk about this, or think about this, for that listener that's listening to this right now that has that opportunity in front of them and is unsure?
Yeah, there's a lot I've learned now. So my journey, that now that I've opened my own agency and I was a shareholder there, I was under a shareholder or partnership agreement, which is up for interpretation. And of course, part of my story is the my former now business partners are suing me over my departure. So we're in the middle of a litigation that's been going on for over a year. I was, lawsuit started last May and still going on. And that's a whole other story. And the legal process in the state of New York takes forever. So nothing happens quickly. But in hindsight, I would have done probably a lot more due diligence with an attorney, made sure I understood the agreement completely, made sure we ironed out any, ambiguity in it. And that's the problem, is that the agreement that I signed, it's not very well written agreement, and therefore it's led me to litigation. And if it was tightened up, either way, whether in my favor or not, but if it was tightened up, it would, in more black and white, we'd have no issue. There would be nothing to litigate. There'd be nothing to argue over because it'd be spelled out. So that's really be my biggest advice, is like, don't do what I did, the naive way, being young and sort of, it's part of it too is like you get the carrot dangled in front of you. And you're like, yeah, ownership, this is great. Ownership is not what it's all cracked up to be. Financially it's good, but I think we all know, I mean, owning an agency or even part of an agency comes with different responsibilities and and different challenges. And unfortunately, I got myself into something where now, in hindsight, I would say, hey, I would have done a way more due diligence instead of, sure. I don't even know if I read the thing. I think I signed it so fast because I was just excited to take on ownership, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that to me would be my biggest advice is like definitely do the due diligence. Don't get starry-eyed over the finance, the financial piece. And then understand who you're getting in business with. That's the other thing. If there's multiple partners, what are their roles? Like what is the setup going to look like? Those are all questions I didn't ask. I was just like, okay, yeah. So shares of the company, like, sure. That means I make a little bit more money. Sure. It means I have some authority. Okay, maybe. Or what? Like, those are all questions that I didn't ask either. And now, talking to anybody that's down that path, it'd be like, make sure you understand who you're getting, in business with. Also understand that just because they're a business partner doesn't mean they got to be your best friend. Business and friendship doesn't mean it's got to go hand in hand. Understand that. And two, understand what your roles and responsibilities are going forward.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a topic we should probably try to talk about a little bit more, Stephen, is like how a partnership would work, kind of who you would look for to be a partner, and that type of stuff. Because I think it is an interesting topic. And for those, most of you know that listen to the show, that Stephen and I both came from an agency where we, potentially tried to become a partner and it didn't work out, probably for the better. So Derick, just to build on this a little bit more, was there any other challenges you faced or any other advice you could give around partnership? Like for me, for instance, like, and I've talked about this with you, Stephen, a lot, is like, I feel like in my situation in the past, I was a lot younger too. And I feel like communication was a big factor. Great person, me and the other partner, great person to be around. We had a great relationship. But when it came to like issues with the business, the communication on both ends was extremely poor. And I feel like ultimately that was one of the biggest issues for me. So I'm curious, besides the legality behind it, is there any other thing you would touch on as far as like what you think would make a good partnership work?
Yeah, you hit something there, Sean, is the communication. It's having clear understanding of what sort of the boundaries are, what your individual roles are, right?
Yeah.
So that was one of the issues of the agency I left, was there was no clear delineation of roles, and it just led to really poor communication, which over time just erodes the partnership, in the sense of and this is what happened in my case. Another generation came into the business, inherited the business. The father who I bought the shares from passed away unexpectedly. Fourth generation comes in the business. There's nothing really laid out, and the communication was poor. We didn't really get along because we didn't see things the same way, and there's really no way to handle that, and because it was never really spelled out. And whose role is what role, like what, and like, yeah, like who's dealing with staff issues, who's hiring, who's firing, like if there's an issue with a process or procedure, like who's responsible for that. If you don't have that stuff ironed out, I mean, it over time, it'll make your life miserable. And I'm telling you, I'm speaking from experience. I mean, it got to a point where, there just was there, we didn't understand each other's roles, and yeah, it just gets to the point where you just become kind of miserable in what you're doing.
Well,
Steven.
I want to just one thought quick, Sean, on that is everything that Derick just said right there also applies to the partnership of your team, right? So if you're thinking of this and not in a partnership and have no desire to talk about a partnership when it comes from an ownership level of an agency, the communication with your team when it's just you and your first CSR is a partnership, and that communication of having the clear roles and the clear responsibilities ahead of time and continuing to have that communication, because we can beat the dead horse. Same thing with my prior story too. There was no communication. Everybody kind of wore all the same hat. We all just kind of did what it did. And here we are. The communication with your team is that exact same communication that would be important in a partnership. I just want to make that comment.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Sean. I'm sorry.
I had a conversation with our buddy Taylor the other day, and we were kind of talking about like, a little bit of a different topic, but if you bring somebody on to the agency, having their roles and responsibilities printed out and showing them visually, hey, if you come on board, this is what you're going to do. This is what your job title entails. And it seems like such an easy thing to do, but a lot of people don't do that. And they come on board and they don't know exactly what they're supposed to do. And then a year down the line, they get kind of upset because they think they're doing things that they shouldn't be doing based off their title. And it causes, confusion and communication issues. And I mean, I just think it's like a recipe for disaster. So Derick, I completely agree with you. I think that's a great point. Have the roles and responsibilities typed and printed out for either your partner or somebody you're onboarding to the agency, because I think that's a huge deal.
Yeah, it totally is. Totally.
Yeah. So let's pivot. So the communication, we just talked about all of that, but then LaTorre Insurance Agency came to birth. Talk to us about that. Talk to us about the process. Talk to us about the early days, and I'm talking as early as Derick in your own head. I think I'm going to do this. Right. I'm thinking I'm actually going to do this. What's this going to look like? And then let's walk to that.
Yeah. Well, it happened kind of fast, but I think that, yeah, exactly. It's like, oh boy, here we go. Yeah. I mean, it happened quick and quicker than I thought. But I think in my head, in retrospect, and it's always easy to kind of go back, but I think over the years, I've always had this idea of like, if I had 100% control of my own agency, I would do, X, Y, and Z. Like I always had that thought in my head. Like if I was going to do this again, I would do this. And some of it was very simple in the sense of coming from an agency. And this is where I see this as a very positive thing, that we're the three of us here are all scratch, right? We're all building something. And I know it's hard to do. It's not easy. However, we have sort of a blank canvas. And that was, to me, was something that I embraced and was excited about, was I can start something from scratch the way I want to be. And I don't have a legacy organization to try to change to do it the way I think it needs to be done. And that was always the challenge. And that was one of the frustrations I always had, was, and this is the analogy I use. It's like the big ship. It's like trying to turn that big ship, right? You're never going to get that thing turned around. Okay. And now as a scratch and starting LaTorre Insurance, it's like I'm the little dinghy. And guess what? If we need to turn this thing around, turn it around as many times as we want to, because guess what? Right now it's me and I'm here. Yeah. And the dinghy does get a little rough once in a while. There's rough. Yeah. Water gets a little rough, but I can start things and do things the way I want to. And there's nobody in my way, meaning there's no staff that won't embrace technology changes. There's no, there's none of that old legacy. Like, well, we did it this way for 22 years, let's do it this way for none of that. So to me, that was something that I embraced, was excited about. And I think I always had in my head for many years, like, hey, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it this way. So that was the basis of how I kind of started, basically, and didn't even know it was already in my head. So the challenge to start was like, oh my gosh, I'm really going to do this thing. But the reality was I had all these ideas already. And once I started to actually put them down, I mean, they just flew out, you know, and there's no way I'm perfect. Like I change my processes and procedures every day, but, you know, it's just what we do. But the start out of the gate, you know, it was a lot smoother than I thought it would have been. And of course, you know, there's been some hurdles. Obviously, we talked about, you know, the litigation. I was running along just fine until I got, you know, served with a lawsuit. But I'm still fine. And I now, in retrospect, even though I'm only, you know, I started January of 21, so, you know, January of 22, excuse me. And so here I am. I'm still in business. I've survived. I'm actually thriving. And, you know, I'm supporting my family, which is the biggest thing, right, that I need to do. Yeah, I work a lot of hours. It's a grind. Um, but all that stuff is for a good purpose and for a good reason. And I'm building something I believe that is going to be sustainable for my family. And that's the main goal and the main driver. And yeah, I mean, if you asked me this question 3 years ago, I'd be like, you're crazy. I'll never start my own agency. But like now that I'm in the middle of it, I'm like, man, I should have did this so many years ago. It's like, you know, I mean, I've been in this business 16 years. Like I could have had my own. I mean, think about all that time I wasted. I could have already been had my own agency. So some days it's like that. Some days, I mean, I think you guys know this. Some days you feel good about what you're doing and you're excited and you're pumped up. And then some days you're like, what did I get myself into? like, man, what did I get myself into? I'm like, you know, so we all have those moments. Anyway, so that was the journey of me kind of starting, and it happened fast, quick. It was, you know, a shotgun, you know, sort of wedding thing had to happen, but we got it. I got it off the ground.
Yeah, but you know, just stealing something you said there about the journey. Thank God for that journey that you had. You know, the journey brought you to where you are right now to be able to do what you're doing right now. So you can look at, and I'm sure you can look back at it and say, well, 16 years, but those 16 years brought you to where you're doing right now. And you said things are going good. And I think that's the thing the three of us can certainly agree on this of being solo one-man shows, and you can get in your own head with that. And it just, you go around and around and around. When in reality, you got to wake up, have the discipline, do it, go to bed, wake up, have the discipline, do it, and just continue to chug down the track. So you said things are going good. So let's dive into the agency. Talk to us about the agency itself, how you're getting clients. You know, you said it's just you right now, I believe. Talk to us all about that.
Yeah, it is just me. I did have a part-time producer on staff for a little while, and you know that it you know really just didn't work that great. So it's really me, and I'm but doing well and growing, um, and really and it's hard to say, like, you know, this is the challenge I've had over the time I've started this is like, well, tell me what good is, like, you know, what's the benchmark for a startup agency and all this stuff. It's like Stephen, you mentioned something like once I got that stuff out of my head and just said, hey, listen, am I doing okay? Am I making a living? Am I happy? Like, I don't care about the benchmarks and am I living up to whatever? Like and all the talking heads that say you need to do it this way or you need to do it this way. It's like, I got all that stuff out of my head and I'm like, hold on, let's just get back to basics. The agency's growing. I'm getting new clients and I'm getting new clients. So, you know, the reality is I can't take any of my old clients because of the lawsuit. So all of my growth is 100% new clients that have never done business with me. And so it's amazing that I've been able to grow the way I've been able to grow, at the clip that I've been able to grow without being able to take any of my clients that I built up over 15 years. And they're all, and the good thing is they're all sitting there waiting to come to me when this is over and that agreement either expires or the lawsuit says I can move on. I have a list of hundreds of clients that are coming to me.
Well,
So
let's back up a second, because I don't want to miss this point that you just said about the benchmarks, comparing yourself to others. We talk about that a lot on the show. Like talk to us more about that. I want to just get your take more on that.
I was early on, I was very caught up in, especially my first year. I was like, well, how much premium do I need to put on the books in my first year? Like, what's the benchmark? And you start to ask people, and you get all these different numbers. And then I started to realize it doesn't matter. I mean, in the sense of it doesn't matter, because how can I measure myself to Sean or to Steven? Like, we're in different markets, different territories. Like, how is your benchmark or mine? Or take like an agent down in Florida or California. Okay, my average homeowner's premium in upstate New York is $1,000. I mean, the average homeowner's premium in the state of Florida is probably $4,000. Like, how can we benchmark ourselves? So I got myself out of the mindset of how much premium do I need to put on the books? How much premium do I need to put on the books? And refocus myself on the benchmarks that I already set for myself, which is multi-policy, right? How many policies per client am I writing? Am I writing the whole account? Am I following my own internal benchmarks? Meaning, I want to write 3 or more policies for every single client. Okay, especially on the personal line side. Commercial line's a little different to benchmark that way. But if you're talking personal lines, it's like, I want to be, 3 or more, right? You want to write an auto, home, and umbrella. And so once I started to focus on my own internal sort of benchmarking and got out of my own head about, oh, I heard that so-and-so did $1 million, because you see those on podcasts and you see them, $1 million in their first year. Great. Well, I didn't do $1 million in my first year. So does that mean I'm a terrible agent? No. And I had to tell myself that, like, get yourself out of your own head and just refocus on the good benchmarks that you need to be doing. Writing full accounts, building good relationships, getting referral relationships so that your funnel continues to be filled.
Well, my point in asking that question was set your own benchmarks. The rest of it's just a distraction. And we talk a lot about the mentorship of this industry and how incredible it is. And it's certainly powerful to know what other people are doing and how they're doing it and how they're taking success in, because the 3 of us can look at a different agent and take something different from that specific agent and implement it into 3 of our different agencies in different ways. Right. So I'm not discrediting that at all, but from the comparison game, and we talked about this before, focus on your benchmarks. Like you said, Derick, well, your rounded policies, the multi policies, how many you want per household, all of that thing. I just think that conversation is so important, especially for the scratch agency owners, the people that are thinking to go in scratch, that are doing it by themselves, because we know how lonely this is. And it is so easy to get caught up in looking to your right, looking to your left, and trying to compare yourself, when you need to just put your head down and continue to write policies and follow your benchmarks. So that was the point I was trying to make there. I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah, and first off, shout out to Mike Sharp, who dropped $1 million in premium his first year in business. But Derick, I completely agree with you. You shouldn't compare yourself to others. And it's funny. I go back to kind of the beginning of this conversation. We both brought up like happiness, right? And I remember the first couple of months of opening my agency, the heart of COVID. If you looked at my numbers, you would have thought, how's this guy going to live to see tomorrow? Basically, just based off the financials of how my agency was doing. And let me tell you, in those moments, I was still the happiest I've ever been the last few years prior to that. And to me, that's worth any benchmark that's out there. So just to build on that, I think you're absolutely correct. Happiness and what's important to you is more important than everything else.
So, and one thing, Sean and I have a close friend, we're going to leave names out of it, obviously, but he's going through something similar to the 3 of us went through. And we have a conversation with him. And I think this can provide value. And Derick, certainly comment on this if you'd like. But when you're sitting here in your own head of, should I do this? Am I going to do this? Is this something that I should do when starting a scratch agency owner? Write that stuff down. Put down what is important to me. Is money important to me? Is happiness important to me? Is time with my kids more important to me? Write that stuff down and say, if I do that, what of these things am I going to do? And to Sean's point, we all know in the first couple of years, the money's, we're not walking around with bags in our pockets. But guess what? In the last 15 months, I've never been happier. And I'm sure we can all say the same things, just like Sean said. And for me, that's what's important. So I mean, when you're if you're listening to this right now and saying, man, I don't know if I can do this, I don't know financially, or I don't know if I can do, the long hours or whatever, write it down and take a look at it and back up and take a look at it and say, what will that look like? And what am I going to achieve by doing that?
Yeah. And I think a good question to ask yourself too, for me, somebody with a kid, is kind of before I do anything like major now, like a question I ask myself is, will my kids be proud of me? Will this make my kids proud of me? And I think that's just a good thing to ask yourself, especially if you're at like a big crossroads like that. Do I want to stay on with this agency with having all these issues, or should I go out and open my own thing? Might be a good question to ask yourself.
And if that your kid's proud of you is the end goal, right? You're up here and then you're backing your way into it by asking yourself that question. Just like a couple episodes ago, we talked about Brett Young. Just like a couple episodes, we talked about Brett Young. What do we want our agency to be? And he said, hold on, what do you want your day to look like? And then back into what your agency wants to be. So, I mean, Sean, that is an excellent point.
Yeah. Derick, tell us a little bit more about, kind of, are you specializing in anything specific at the agency? I know you said you do some personal, some commercial. Do you have a niche, or are you more of like a generalist? Is there anything you're like really like to target? Dive into that a little bit.
Yeah, I'm a generalist. I'm not a niche guy. Hard in this territory to be a niche guy. It's just my opinion, small town USA, I think it's hard. I think you have to be a generalist, unless you're going to take it, I don't know, unless you're going to take one niche and kind of try to go, more regional or national with it. It's hard. That's not what I want to do. I mean, I simply want to have a good, respected local agency. And I want people in my community to know, hey, that's the guy you go to get insurance from. That's my model. So I run, and I honestly run, I'm 50-50 premium wise in terms of personal and commercial. And really it is. It's like exactly split. I was just looking at it this morning. I'm like, I don't know how I've done that 50-50, which is great, because, and I don't have, of course I've got some large clients, but I don't have a big spread. Like I don't have, one ginormous client that if they leave me tomorrow, I'm going to go bankrupt. I like that model. That is the model I think, works for me. And I think will, again, going back to this idea about sort of, where you want to be and lifestyle and goals, like that's where I want to be. I don't want to be the 10 location, $10 million in revenue agency. I just don't want to do that. Mm-hmm. And also that's the great thing about starting scratch. This industry right now has come a long way since I got into it, and the efficiencies that you can achieve, you can run an agency with less staff and achieve more profitability and more efficiency and have a happier staff, and make more money than the guy down the street that might have way more staff. I mean, way more staff and more headaches. And so that's been my goal, and my part of my journey is understanding where I want to be, where I want to go, and understanding that I don't want to be the big shop and I want to be the generalist, and and personal lines, commercial lines, and not have to worry about, specializing in anything. And also, I think this market right now, I would hate to be in a niche spot as this current market shifts every day. I just can't imagine if you only focus on one thing right now, how hard it would be to, pivot if, say, that market just shrivels up.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we talk about that a lot too. It's like it's the beauty of what we're doing. There's so many different ways to slice a pie. There's so many different ways you can do this. It is unbelievable. And one thing I wanted to talk about, Derick, was the first hire. You had a producer. They're no longer with you. We don't certainly have to get into that. I'm curious, why was the first one for you the producer instead of a service staff? And now going ahead, is that something you're still looking for? Are you going to look for a service staff, or kind of bring us through the next couple of years in your vision?
Yeah, so the producer thing was kind of a knee-jerk reaction. He had left another agency, was licensed, but wasn't really a producer. He was a more in sort of business development, but he was licensed, and so he kind of needed a place to hang. And he, because he was licensed, place some business. And so I said, sure, come hang with me. And he was kind of new, never really produced. And I said, I'll take you under my wing. And I thought, in my mind at the time, I really thought, you know what, that would be great. Let him go out there, sort of beat the doors down. And, I know the business. I've been doing this for 16 years. Like, I'll teach him everything I know. We'll grow together. And I had that mindset, right? But the reality is that I think we all know this. The grind is the grind, and a producer, let alone starting your own agency, but just a producer with only a year and a half of experience in the business, and at this level, he was only doing business development, so wasn't really selling a policy, was just going out and making relationships. I mean, it's an uphill battle. It's hard, I mean, and I tried to help him, in terms of get a plan in place. But, I think the reality set in really quickly that it is hard. It's a struggle, to produce, and it's a struggle to produce when you don't have the experience. So that's kind of where that went. Future for me is definitely a service person. I'd like to hire, by the end of the year, my goal is to have a full-time virtual assistant on staff. It's been a goal for a while. I want to get a VA on staff. I want to use a VA, obviously, for a lot of the back office tasks that we have to handle day in and day out here, right? As an agency, I think VAs are well suited in that if you can find the right one. And that's part of the process I've been going through, is trying to vet, trying to find the right one. I'd also like to use a VA to fine tune and write all of my policies and procedures, because I think those type of tasks a VA can do really well. If you have the right VA, again, like, you can train them, they can do screenshots, right? They can use Tango, everything can be documented. And my goal is to do that for a period of time, because then once I'm ready to bring on a CSR, my whole process is documented. I mean, it's easy, right? We've vetted it all out between me and a VA. Like, this is what you need to, everything is documented. And going back to what we originally talked about, is like, when you bring somebody in now, they know what their responsibilities are and they know how to get the job done. And it's not like coming in. I couldn't imagine having a CSR right now in the way sort of I operate,
Yeah.
Sure. That's a great point.
It's like, yeah, could you imagine? Like, for me right now, like, because I'm the jack of all trades. Like, I mean, we're just doing everything, and so
imagine that
everything's
roles and
on fire.
Responsibilities list. It'd just be like everything.
So, everything. So anyway, so that's where I'm headed, and I'm taking it slow, purposely, understanding that, yes, I am working a lot of hours because I am the service person, I am the salesperson, I am everything. But purposely doing that, understanding that the short-term pain will be worth it long-term when I bring somebody on. And also, I've taken it a little slow just because the reality is I'm under this lawsuit, and I need to get through that before I bring somebody in full-time you bring somebody into full-time with that going on, I don't think is actually the right thing to do to that person either. is like coming into my reality right now with that. So I just take it slow. I'll take the long hours and the pain, and we'll get there. But come, end of 2023, it's a VA. 2024, we're gonna get a full-time CSR on staff, and we're gonna ramp up. And I'm actually in talks with 2 agencies right now on acquisitions. So
nice.
That is also on the horizon. So I have 2 acquisitions. One, we're about to pen a full buy-sell arrangement. The owner's not ready to leave just yet, but if he gets hit by the bus, we're going to have an agreement in place where I can buy him out, and he wants to retire in a couple of years, and we're going to have it all spelled out. So that one is coming to fruition. And then I have a second one that I'm working on, similar type of arrangement where no perpetuation plan, and going to work on a buy sell, but that one is probably, unless something catastrophic happens, that sale is probably not for 7 or 8 years down the road. But having a conversation early. So,
and Derick, how'd you have those conversations?
Yeah, the one that I'm working on right now, the owner actually reached out to me, which doesn't happen, right? I mean, this is stuff that's like you can't make up. But thankfully, it was part of, I represent Erie Insurance, and Erie agencies can be difficult to sell because Erie is picky about who they appoint. And in this particular case, this is another Erie agent, and 90% of his book is Erie, and he can't go to anybody but another Erie agent. And when he looked around the area, he just didn't see an agent he particularly wanted to sell to because they didn't fit what he wanted to do, or he just didn't see the right opportunity. And then I got the Erie appointment, and next thing you know, he's calling me saying, "Hey, we need to have a conversation." And that was, that was over a year and a half ago, and we've just over that time have built a conversation. He's become even a mentor to me.
Sure.
In the sense, he's been in the business for 20 something years. He is an Erie agent, and there are some unique things with Erie. So he's a guy that, I pick up the phone and I'm able to have a conversation with,
Sure.
And he helps me, navigate through. So we've built a relationship, but that's how that opportunity is, come about.
Yeah, very cool. I just love that conversation because I've shared here. I had 4 at bats over the last year, and they were all just from putting myself out there and saying, "Hey, I want to have a conversation," or casting a net and seeing what happens. So I admire that. Congratulations and best of luck on that, Derick. As we look to wrap this up and respect your time here, we asked our staple question here at the end. It's only been a couple years for you. I think you're coming on your 2nd year here. But if tomorrow morning you were to wake up and start over from zero, with what you've learned as a scratch agency owner up to this point, what's one thing that you do differently?
It's just one.
Just one.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to say just one. I think it goes back. I think it goes back to what we originally talked about. I would quickly get out of my own head, and faster, and stop worrying about what everybody else is doing and what the talking heads, I call them, are telling you to do. There are so many people in this. There are very good people in this industry, but unfortunately, there are also people out there that like to talk a lot. But reality is they don't actually know what they're doing. And stop listening to those folks. Align yourself with folks that are solid people that are going to give you solid advice, and get out of my own head. That's exactly what I would do.
That's perfect. Derick, again, thank you very much for taking the time out of your busy schedule here to join us. We know how busy it can be to take an hour when you're a one-man show, so I'm sure you got some voicemails and emails to get to. But for anybody who wants to follow along your journey, maybe reach out to you, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah, best way is either in my email, which is Derick@LaTorreInsuranceAgency.com. And you can also call me anytime. My cell phone is what I use, and everybody has it. So I'll give you that number. That's 518-376-1882. But happy to have any conversation with anybody who wants to talk about anything.
Awesome. And look, before we wrap it up here, I want to just mention again what Sean did, just to the listeners that are listening, just a simple thank you. It has been an incredible journey being able to do this. And like I said, we had no plan. Sean called me up one day after knowing each other for about a month and a half and was like, we have to do this. Let's just do it. We turned on the camera and we've just had fun. And I say that with kind of this next step of just creating a website. Do us a favor and go check it out, scratchagencypodcast.com. Just a simple landing page, but it has access to all of the different platforms that we're on, updates with all of the most recent episodes, and it'll be a great place for you to bookmark there to listen to all things Scratch Agency Podcast. So everybody, that's another great episode of the Scratch Agency Podcast. Thanks for joining us. Do us a favor, like the show, share the show, and subscribe, and bookmark the website. Most importantly, remember to dig down deep, believe in yourself, and own your own future. We'll see you next week. Take care.